Hi guys, welcome back to this channel. So I'm very much excited to have you back here as we digest and see how we can do better research in our areas of interest. So are you a PhD student or a master's student who is struggling with the data correction? You don't know how to correct the data. So you're wondering whether to use a primary or a secondary data for your dissertation or your thesis. Well, you are in the right place. So today we are diving into the methods of collecting data for research and analyzing which method holds the more weight, especially for a PhD student or PhD dissertation. And this is in response or in a comment I got from one of the PhD students who is not sure the best method that he can use to correct the data or the data that he can use in his dissertation. And therefore, this video is tailored to that perspective. And therefore, we're going to use real-world empirical evidence to support our work or to support the method that we can use, especially for PhD dissertation, which is more varied, give you more weight in your work when you finish, and put you in a better position. So if you are new in this channel, I am Dr. Abraham Kiruga, and I am a researcher and a lecturer, and therefore, as we are working together in this channel, you can share, you can subscribe, and also put your comment so that we can also improve in the next video. So let's get started. So welcome back. Let's start with primary data. So number one is the primary data collection. The primary data collection. And this is, we call it the gold standard. And there is a reason why it is a gold standard. So the primary data collection, this is the method where you generate fresh, first-hand data for your research. Very important. That is why it is a gold standard. You get a fresh data, first-hand data for your research. And therefore, your research stands to be more credible, to be more varied, and to be very more important for anybody who wants to use your findings to solve the real problem in the ground. So the primary data means you are collecting directly data from the source through techniques like surveys, like experiments, observations. You can do interviews directly from the sources. You can interview people, you can sit where and see how people are behaving, and you can do that. You can use surveys like questionnaires. You can prepare such questionnaires and you send them and you correct the first-hand information for specifically your study. And therefore, this makes this method to be very unique of collecting the primary data. And we have the purpose. And we are going to demonstrate the purpose and the importance, or the advantage that are key for primary data. And one of the advantage, it is a real time and fast hand. It's a real time and fast hard. Real time and fast hard data. Tailored. This data is tailored. It is specifically tailored for your research objective or to suit your research objectives. And therefore it becomes very key and very important. That's a very good advantage that this data is real, it is fresh, and it is tailored for your objective. Therefore, you are going to get a clear answer for your question or for your hypothesis or for your objective. Number two, allow you to control the research process. So it allows you to control the research process. So you are going to control your research process by ensuring the accuracy of the data. You are going to be very specific. You're going to specify what you want, and you are going to correct what you want for that specific objective. Therefore, it becomes very, very much important. Then number three, which is very important for me at this level, it is highly reliable. Very important. Highly reliable. It is highly reliable and varied. And varied for testing hypothesis. Very important. It is very, very highly reliable and varied for testing hypothesis. And that makes it to become very strong data for any dissertation, for any hypothesis, for any thesis that is going to be done by anybody who wants to do a research. And according to Sanders and others in 2019, they documented that 80% of the PhD research or researchers in social science relies on primary data, as it allows researchers to generate new knowledge rather than relying on pre-existing literature. Very important. At least 80% for PhD research in social sciences, in business, in economics, in finance, in accounting, relies on primary data. Why? Because they are able to generate new knowledge instead of just relying on a pre-existing literature, which might be misleading. They might giving contradicting results because many of them, maybe they have not gone to the ground to check how the ground has changed, how the ground has evolved, how things have changed. But you have gone directly to the ground and you have experienced how things have changed in the ground, and therefore you can come up with a new idea. So that now take us to the method of collecting primary data. If this data is going to be fresh, first-hand, and also reliable for our study, highly reliable, tailored to our study, I can control what I need. Then which method can I use to go and correct that data? So method number one is the survey and questionnaires. So methods for collecting primary data. One is the survey questionnaires. And this we are saying it is best for large-scale data. It is best for large-scale data. If your study requires a volume of data, it requires to collect data from different or many respondents, then you can prepare the questionnaire. Because why is it important? It's because you're going to prepare a set of structured questions which you will use to collect the data that you require, the quantifiable data that you need. You prepare a set of structured questions and you send them, and you are going to correct the data. For example, in our case that we have been using the financial risk and financial performance, you can distribute the questionnaires to the chief financial officers, the finance managers, the finance analysts, and you are going to get the first-hand information from them, which is going to give you an insight in your work. Okay, but it also has some disadvantages, because advantages and disadvantages, the surveys and the questionnaires. One, large sample size. It is good before the large sample size. It is statistically varied because of the volume of the respondents that are going to answer your questions. And also it is cost effective, because you cannot be able to reach like 2,000 respondents, and you need to correct you to finalize your work within a timeline. So it is cost effective, but it also have some disadvantages which are very key. And one is issues to do with response bias. Some of these respondents are biased. They can give you unreliable information, incorrect information. Okay, and also we have a major one, which is the low response rate. Many of these people that you're going to collect the data from, you're giving them questionnaire, you're sending them questionnaires. They are very busy in their work, they're very busy in their schedule of work, and therefore they have no time for you to sit down and answer a 5-page questionnaire, answering all those questions. And therefore it becomes that many of our respondents will not be able to answer all the questions. And that takes us to the method number 2, which is interviews. So why interviews? Interviews are best for in-depth insight. If you want to get down to the ground and get the actual information, then you can organize for interview, because this is one-on-one, structured, and also semi-structured, and also an unstructured discussion. So it is a discussion that is one-on-one, very structured. Some it's not even structured, and therefore you can discuss many things as you are correcting the data that fits your study. So you can prepare an interview guides that will guide you in correcting the data that you require. For example, a PhD student searching on corporate governance might interview the board members and executives to understand how they make the decision, or the decision process. This is what we are saying. If you're doing a PhD on corporate governance, you might decide, I'll interview the CEO, the board members, the executive, and they are going to give me first-hand information on how they make their decisions. So it is very important, one, because it is rich. You get the clear picture of what is in the crowd. It is a detailed, you get a very detailed through that conversation. And it is also flexible. It is also flexible. As you do the interview, you are in a discussion. But one of the disadvantages, it is time consuming. It takes a lot of time to reach all these people. And it also prone to what we call the interview bias. They might not tell you the actual reality in the crowd. So they might try to run here and there so that they don't even expose the secrets of the organization too much. So sometimes it is prone to interview biasness. That takes us to number 3, that is experiment. So we have experiment, another method that you can use to correct the primary data. And this is best for scientific and behavioral studies. So for those who want to test issues to do with the science, the behavior of the people, the behavior those who are doing the behavioral studies, this is best for them, because they will do a controlled experiment. So this is where it involves manipulating variables in a controlled setting or in a controlled room, just as I've said. So you are manipulating the variables to see the result. Like, for example, you are testing whether market volatility affects investors' behavior. So you are going to use to stimulate stock market experiments. So you are going to do an experiment, and you are going to have a product test and see how best that market volatility affects the investor's behavior. So you need to do an experiment on that, and you can do that through simulation. So without forgetting that this method is good, because it is going to establish a cause and effect relationship immediately, and it is highly reliable, because you are going to get the result immediately. And therefore, this now means it is an expensive affair. You need maybe to be in a laboratory to do that experiment. You need chemicals and whatever to do that. So it's also difficult to generalize findings. You might get different findings. So how do you conclude? How do you generalize those findings? So it comes with that disadvantage on how to generalize it. So and that now take us to number 4, that is observation. Observation. So observation is where best for behavioral studies and real-time analysis, because you will sit somewhere and see how people are behaving and whatever they are doing. So the best for it is good for the behavioral studies. For example, you're correcting the behavior of customers who are entering and leaving the supermarket. So you'll sit near the entrance and you observe the behavior of the customers. So this is collecting data by observing the real-time behavior of the customers. For example, a researcher studying consumer spending habits might observe shopping patterns in malls. You sit somewhere and you see how the customers are shopping. What are their shopping patterns? And you can do that the whole week and you'll be able to get the data. So with that, it's direct. So it is something you're getting direct information because you are there. So it is a real world insight. You're going to get the real world situation the way it is in the ground. And it also eliminates the response biasness because you are not directly interacting with them. You are just observing their behaviors. But remember, it is time intensive and it has also ethical concerns. Why the ethical issues will lie is where are you observing what I'm doing? Do you have my permission? So it has a lot of ethical concerns and time consuming. So it's a good method of correcting the first-hand information, but the problem, it is biased. It has a lot of ethical issues. Now that takes us to method number 2, that is secondary data correction. Very important, secondary data collection. So the secondary data correction, this is the shortcut, and we can call it the shortcut or the power move. Shortcut or the power move. The power move. Why is it? Because it is an efficient way to build an existing literature. So secondary data correction, it is an efficient way, the easiest way, the shortcut, and that's why there's the shortcut here, to build or to improve on existing literature. And therefore, secondary data means it is just the pre-existing information or the data that was collected by other researchers, the government, and other institutions for their own specific purpose. And therefore, you are using it for your own research. You're collecting information from that information that you collected, getting what you need from it so that you can fit in your work. And it has an advantage. One, it is saves time and cost, because no need to go and collect fresh data, no need to go and interview anybody, just go into the journals, to the books, the library, and do your desktop study. Another one, access to information and large data set that will be difficult to correct. So you'll be able to be exposed to a large volume of the data set, and therefore it is your work now to be able to separate what you need and what you don't want. So it's also useful for comparative and trade analysis. When you want to do a trade analysis and be able to understand the relationships, so it becomes very easy. And according to Johnson, 2017, he says that in his research that 60% of doctoral theses in finance use secondary data. Okay, why? Because much of the data that we require for many of the finance work are basically the second data, that financial statement, financial reports that have been prepared by the organization. That is where we get many of those information. So because mainly from the maybe stock exchange financial reports and other economic databases, it is available, and therefore that is why he concluded, or that study concluded, that 60% of the doctoral theses in finance use the secondary data to do their work. So what are the sources? Where are the sources of these sources of secondary data? So we have different sources of the secondary data. One is published academic research. We have journals, dissertations, books, etc. All those ones are part and parcel of the sources of secondary data. We have financial reports and economic data from the World Bank, from the stock market indices, and from all wherever the financial reports have been prepared by the organization, we can be able to get there. We also have the government and the institutional reports. So we have the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Census Data, World Health Organization, etc. All these government and other institutions, they collect data, and therefore that data can be very useful for our analysis if we require the secondary data to do our work. So that takes us to the most important part of this session, that is between primary and secondary data. Between primary and secondary data. Okay, so which one carries more weight? Which one carries more weight? Which one carries more weight in a PhD dissertation in response to comment of my viewer? So between primary and secondary data, which one carries more weight, especially for a PhD dissertation? So let's address this big question, because this is a big question that I've been asked and I want to address it here now. So should PhD students use primary data or secondary data? That is the question. I can hear your comments. So you can comment and I will get your comment. So should a PhD student use primary data, secondary data? So here there are key considerations. There are key considerations. Primary data. Primary data is more original, highly credible, contribute new knowledge. Get me right. We are digesting between primary data and secondary data. Dissecting, that is what I mean. And we want to make a decision, at least a concrete decision, between the primary and secondary data, which one is more suitable or it has more weight. It is not a must, but which one has more weight for a PhD dissertation? Start with the primary data. I'm saying primary data is more original, highly credible, and it contributes more knowledge. And therefore, it is preferred for most PhD research. Number two, secondary data. It is time consuming. It also risks of being outdated because you are reviewing pre-existing literature. It is also prone to being biased, and therefore it is best for comparative studies. And therefore, the justification why the primary data is more preferable for PhD research is, we can quote Crosswell 2018, who's in their research, or in their work, they say that PhD dissertation that rely on primary data tend to be more impactful and novel, as they contribute directly to advancing knowledge in the field, because you are collecting fresh and original data, and therefore it has more impact and novel, and it contributes to advancing the knowledge in the field. I don't know what is your comment, but that is my take from my research, that for PhD, primary data is more preferable. It is not a must, but it's more preferable because it is going to be more credible, it is going to be more impactful, and it will contribute to a new knowledge. And there you have it. So whether you are you'll choose primary or secondary data, always ensure your method align with your research objective. So whatever method you're going to use, make sure it aligns with your research objective. So which data collection method are you using for your research? Put it in your comments. So if you find this video to be very helpful and useful to advance your knowledge in your research, you can share, subscribe, and like. Shares with your fellow researchers and your students. So see you in the next video. Thank you.